Okay, well, I'm tap dancing. Hi, I'm Shona. I have been working on the TaskRabbit clone as all of us have been working on. And I got to the end of it, and so I'm not really going to do a demonstration of the stuff that everybody else built. We all built it. We all have been there. I'm going to show you the one bit that I added, and then I'm going to talk about MVP, because that at the end of it, he said, okay, there, we've got an MVP, and then I had some questions, and I realized that, in fact, it was a good set of functions that was almost end-to-end, but there were missing pieces even at that point, so I called it just one more thing. All I have at the end added was, in addition to the ability for this to be completed, I let the original poster be able to check on the thing, and then this fellow is obsessed with soup. I have the one guy, all of my tasks have to do with getting food for his soup. So anyway, he can in fact now hit a verify button and say, yes, I did in fact get my cabbage and it was delivered on time, and that closes it. I just realized after I did that this had a not completed, so I added a or verified to the bit of task that had so that button no longer appears for that person. And I was really keen and enthusiastic about that, and then I realized that I have promised to bring this man large quantities of perishable foods, and I don't know where he lives. And I have no way of contacting him. So there's some really fundamental things that are missing from this, even at this point, because there's no actual relationship between the poster and the runner. So you can agree to do things and then actually have no way to complete that task. And that led me to the question about what are these more pieces that are missing, and could you get the job done with what we've got right this minute? And in fact, I think you would find that you couldn't get the job done unless the original poster had put their address and details in under the description, and that sort of runs contrary to most of our security and safety regulations around using the internet. So there's still some problems with this. As it happens, CL and I this weekend were working on the problem of MVP or DEEC. What can we actually build that is a sellable component, and what's our minimum viable product? But we've been sort of running around that question for about 6 months now, and so we brought to bear on it a very specific process, which was called How You Slice It, which came from a book called User Story Mapping. So we have the reference to the book, and I will stick the article up called How You Slice It onto Slack at the end of this presentation. The question is, what is an MVP? And this process that we use starts you with a feature analysis, but by thinking about business processes. And as you go through it, you will discover user functions within it, and then you have to sort of decide which are the most critical of these. And those combinations of what's the business flow and how essential is this to the process sort of defines for you not just your MVP, but subsequent releases as well. So it tells you what order you should be building things in, basically. It's a pretty comprehensive, I think it took us about 7 or 8 hours, and this was the second time we tried it. This time we were a lot more successful. You start off by collecting the features, and then you add to those sets of features, and we have 85 or 90 post-it notes. You add to each one, who does this, how frequently, and how valuable is this to the process? And then you try to put them into sequence, you group by frequency, and as you're doing this, you're going to see logical breaks in the process flow where the control hands from one person to another, or one function to another. And then once you've done all of that, you mark what he calls system spans, which are points where you say everything above this makes one pass through the system, where you can say this is a buying, receiving, selling, analyzing. The bare minimum, the bare bones minimum that makes this useful is to be able to do a receiving and then sell the things. And so he says it represents the smallest set of features necessary to be minimally useful in a business context. And one of the things that he points out is that as you slice through this, you find what your releases are, and your first release might not be your first public release. And that was really a very useful, explicit thing to have him say, because it helped us define not just engineering and coding requirements, but who we're planning to release to at each stage. So we wound up with like slices that say, this is beta, this is a soft launch, and this is a hard launch. And if we haven't built this, we have nothing to sell. And so if we haven't built this, the system doesn't work. But if we haven't built this, we still have nothing to sell. And so it actually also gave us some information about at what point is this revenue generating. And it also implies things about messaging at various stages, so that when you're in beta, you can have a real clear expectation. So this piece is going to be under testing, and therefore it's going to work not optimally for you as a beta user, possibly. So that was, I was surprised how much extra information was present in this process. That is, in fact, what I had to talk about today. I'm going to put not just the link, but the whole article up as a file on Slack. Okay, yep.
Did you find, like, so you wrote down that you had like 80 tasks to do for Nerd Week. Did you feel like all 80 of those were necessary for an MVP?
No.
Okay, so that was just like your overall goal. And how many did you have down for your MVP?
I think we've got about 15
Okay.
on the first slice, but that's like beta release. And then we have the third release would be a soft launch where we could actually let strangers use it. And the sort of, I think it was about the sixth release where we said there's enough value here that we have a significant possibility of revenue generation. So that would be the hard launch at that point.
It might be worth just making sure that Matt Stewart sees the Slice article or the link to it, because some of those things were the things we were talking about over here when we were talking about the parts of the product launch that the business model canvas and all the pre-prep stuff doesn't in any way, shape, or form help you with the launch planning.
Yeah.
And that is a huge component of any technical rollout, and none of us have any experience with technical.
It's not explicit in here,
but it kind of aligns out.
It's implied. It certainly says, hey, here's somewhere you're going to need more information, and here's somewhere you're going to need really clear messaging, because people are going to expect this feature to be coming, and
it needs to be in progress. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I'll stick that article on Slack, and if anybody has any questions, I've still got it stuck to my wall at home. We've got pictures. So, thanks.
So since this morning, I did get some of my TaskRabbit working again. It's still not 100%, but I do have more than I did earlier. I still need to work with the commenting, and I think it was accepting offers, but I did start doing I skipped ahead and did the Firebase and Mandrill email just to kind of clear my head for a minute. And then I was also thinking about project ideation, and I had an idea to make basically a travel itinerary, but one that you share with your friends. So if I was going to Halifax and I didn't want to post on Facebook, hey guys, I'm going up for a week, does anybody want to hang out? Or rather message them directly, I could share a schedule, and if they have time, they could like kind of drag and drop, do you want to go here at this time? I'm free. So I'm gonna try and finish this for the rest of the day and then see where I'm at.
what did you find you were having trouble with the TaskRabbit tutorial? Like areas where you specifically hung up, or is there anything that you feel you need more?
There was a lot of syntax stuff originally, and it was yesterday and the day before when I was only spending like an hour at a time. I wasn't getting focused enough to keep going with it. I was kind of touching on it and then losing track of where I was.
It's tough getting the zone that way.
Yeah. So if I probably had like 4 hours to just sit down and do it, it wouldn't have been, cause rather than backtrack and redo it all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's a cool idea. I'd like to see what you get when you're just kind of look at it.
Yeah, I just told Carol 20 minutes ago I thought it was cool, so.
All right, excellent. Any more questions? All right, good job, Darren. All right.
Some short. All right, so my project is on the TaskRabbit clone, but I also incorporated presenting using HTML, CSS. Something I wanted to do for a while, so I did it. So I embedded my website into the presentation that's written in HTML. So let's see if it works. So yeah, it's I think it's something that'll allow me to continue to use my basic skills in HTML and CSS and not having to rely on PowerPoint, Keynote, and all that other crap. So I like it. It was a fun exploration. And I broke a lot of code over the weekend trying to implement another feature set. So it was a nice distraction to do something. So having said that, as you can see, we can interact directly with my site here, I hope, still. Maybe not. And just gonna.
Cool, is that a link to your site in?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Perhaps you can teach us to do that.
I will try. So I can register a new user just like everyone else, but what I really wanted to highlight was my email through Mandrill working. So you can see I do have my dashboard with no tasks or anything like that. But hopefully if I go to my email, you will see a new message show up shortly. So, like I said, we can bump in, jump in, and interact with the site. So one of the things I did do, I customized the colors. It's North Carolina blue, if anyone was wondering. And at the bottom, I did another, I put an NG view for footer. So that's persistent on every page that you go into. Did it give me an email yet? Anyway, that'll work as soon as I'm done. So back to the presentation. So yeah, you can embed anything. It's just, just like you're working with code. So there's a lot of animations you can do with CSS. Yeah, it's
Did you use Angular at all, or was it just?
no. I use the Reveal JavaScript framework.
Okay, cool.
There's actually, thanks Carol, it's a good segue. If anyone would like to check this out, Reveal.js is the one I use. Joe, I think, used Impress.js, and there's also Intro.js. Impress, you can do a lot more with respect to animations. It looks a lot more like Prezi. It's not a look I want to go for, so I went with the Reveal. And the main reason I got distracted using this stuff is because I kept screwing up using Angular Cloak, which was something I tried to do. Because I think the TaskRabbit website is brutally ugly when you first log on to it, or not TaskRabbit, the Task Ninja tutorial, and because you see a view of all these tasks, so it's not very nice or pretty. So I'd like to do some sort of splash page that was there, especially if you weren't logged in, so you can't see any tasks that are there until you register and log in. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay, cool, that's awesome.
Thanks.
What made you decide to abandon NG Cloak? Did you
No, I didn't abandon it. I just kept breaking the code, so I said
Yeah.
I have to have a presentation on my one.
Okay, I didn't delve too deeply into it yet, but it looked like
It's-
there were a couple articles saying you might not want to be using it.
I didn't find those.
Yeah, no, it's just the first thing I saw when I looked up. I'll forward them over to you.
Okay.
I didn't actually read them yet, so
Yeah.
I just kind of did a quick look.
Sure. The way it works is basically you put your splash page content above, and then the regular content below. And they just have a class tag, I think, of splash.
Okay.
And that's what triggers it. So once your page actually loads,
Yep.
it will hide the splash page and display your content.
Oh, okay.
That's the cloak of NG Cloak. So anyway.
Yeah.
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 Thanks.
That's super cool.
All right, you're good.
So for this week's presentation, we were presenting on project group done last weekend and kind of the weekend or the week before, and it was the Code for Startup tutorial on cloning TaskRabbit using Angular and Firebase. And my name is AJ Fraser, and you can tweet at me at AJ Fraser. It's funny because I totally was not Twitter savvy, and now I've been trying to tweet every day. Very new concept. So I just kind of want to cover a couple of things on this tutorial. My particular thoughts about this was that I found the tutorial was actually pretty clean and concise. He had a good step-by-step way of moving through rebuilding TaskRabbit. It was fast. I was able to do it pretty quick. I think I got it done by Monday last week, and I was able to kind of put some focus on a few other things, although it was buggy. There were some things that were in Leo's own code that, they weren't exactly perfect, but I did find it overall pretty useful, and we'll be using this tutorial to kind of help me with some other things in the future. So my stumbling blocks were that because it was buggy and because I made some mistakes and Angular isn't forgivable, I spent a lot of time on debugging, and that actually was another learning piece. So I got to know if somebody would break, it got quicker and quicker for me to figure out how to fix it, and it was usually just a semicolon or a colon or a whatever. It didn't immediately solidify my learnings because I wanted to blow through it. I should have spent a little bit more time going piece by piece, and I will do that. I'll get to it in a minute. And de-anonymization of the database. I don't really have that conceptualized yet, so. The technology we used, AngularJS, Modern Web Framework, Firebase, which is a really cool real-time data syncing database, Zapier, which is great for multiple app interactions, and we use that with Mandrill and our Firebase, Mandrill being this really awesome MailChimp emailing service for business. All of which, by the way, Mandrill and Zapier I think are great. I think they were easy to sign up and use, and I'm excited to use them in my own applications. And Firebase, I'm going to spend a lot more time getting to know. And then so my next steps are understanding component by component exactly what was done doing the tutorial. Same thing with Zapier and Mandrill and Firebase. I want to get those down pat. It'd be nice to add a new feature to TaskRabbit, although to be honest, I'd like to actually just build a new app and maybe even go step by step with Leo through the tutorial again, but then just spending more time and messing my own thing up. So when he does the login feature, I will actually build a login feature, but instead of building a task thing, I'll build something else, break it for a little while, and then once I'm ready to move on, I'll move on. And a new tutorial, so I'm actually just going to go into the Ruby on Rails tutorial now, because I've been kind of curious about Ruby for a while. I already looked at what he was building, and you actually build code for startup. You rebuilt what we've been learning on for the last couple of weeks, so that's kind of neat. So if anybody has any questions. Oh, actually, here's a little tutorial of my demo of my TaskRabbit clone, although it looks pretty familiar to everybody. You got your login functionality, you get your password. Anyway, you've all seen it before. I don't think we need to go through it. Okay, any questions?
Good job, AJ.
Oh, and one more thing too. I'm really loving using Illustrator to take, cause like sometimes apps, they don't have good versions of their logo online. So you can take those crappy versions, I stick them in Illustrator, I turn them into image vectors and expand them out, and I can manipulate all the little pieces to it. And so it's pretty cool. I've been using it an awful lot.
You could do like a 1-day tutorial or like an hour or something, because like I have no idea how to use it, and I've only ever like watched Emily draw something on it, and it looks really cool.
Yeah.
But like I have no idea how it functions, and it seems so cool.
Yeah, and Illustrator has, it's got like a steeper learning curve than Photoshop does. Photoshop is actually really intuitive.
So people keep telling me.
So Illustrator's not, and there's like a lot of really easy key things that I've learned from that like took me, like I had to read a lot and just spend a lot of time on it, which I could just tell you it would be easier.
I like that.
And of course you could probably torrent both older versions of Illustrator and Photoshop, but paying for the subscription service while you're a student is actually pretty cheap. So if you use it as much as I do.
It's really good. You're getting the nose for getting out the bugs and stuff like that, so it's
Also, what I spent a bunch of time on at the end of last week was I'm just redoing my blog entirely, and I've decided instead of just dedicating it to code, I'm just going to make it a personal blog about community, design, development, lifestyle, art, culture, that sort of stuff. Especially there was stuff about the Nova Scotia Film Tax Credit, and then I've got this whole, like I've given the lecture to a couple of my friends before about arts and creativity as social capital in young people, and how we're not fostering that where we did about 10, 15 years ago, and we're not doing the same thing. What it's going to lead to is less creative. Like creativity is a skill set, right? You can develop it. It's a way in which you think, and we did a whole lot better work in Cape Breton 10 years ago than we do right now in developing that in youth. So little things like that, little musings, conversations I've had, and people have said, write it down, I've never written it down. So anyway, this is the new blog.
good job.
Hi everybody, my name's Emily McLeod, and this week I'm just going to be talking a bit about the TaskRabbit clone that we worked on, that everybody worked on. So there's a bit of redundancy here, but I'll just go over some of the things I changed with my clone. So I created a product called Moving On, which is basically which is a product to help you move on. So whatever you're moving on from, we're here to help you one task at a time. So you can create tasks to help you get over experiences, relationships, what have you. Big thanks to Leo at Code for Startup, classmates and mentors. Also this week, past week I guess, I realized I like learning from tutorials. They're very informative, super fun to learn with, and to have a product after everything's said and done is really nice. You feel like you actually created something, so you get a little boost of self-esteem there, which is really nice. And I'm getting more comfortable with AngularJS. Definitely not a developer, but getting a little bit more familiar with it, so that's nice. So this is a video that you guys have all seen, like AJ said before, but it's my product. So log in, and yeah, you don't really have to watch this, but I'll show you what I did improve upon, I suppose. I added a kudos feature. So you click on a task, and like a comment, you type in whatever you want to say. Kudos, thank you, it was a great time, whatever. And it shows up in Firebase, which was also a really cool tool that we learned how to use. Really liked learning how to do that. Kind of sad that we're moving on from MySQL, but apparently we're not. But we're doing a little bit more of that, so whatever. This was a nice addition to what we were learning. And next steps, I want to have a way to accumulate kudos points with moving on. So users are ranked based on kudos. And my startup idea that I've been thinking of, I had a bit of inspiration over the weekend. I went to a memorial service for the Holocaust at the synagogue on Whitney Avenue, and I thought it would be cool to have sort of an app for mediation to bring sides together and have a common ground where they can find commonalities in two opposing sides. I don't know if I'll explore that, but it's just an idea that I had. I thought it would be kind of cool, something that I have a little bit of passion about as far as mediation goes, and maybe exploring that. So that's where I am right now. Thank you.
All right, hello everybody. I am Brian Best, and I'm the CTO of Phase.io for those of you that are watching online. And I'm here to talk to you about the tech of my little own startup. And so, but first I want to get into my last week. Over the past little while I've been reading, and I've been reading more than I have been over the past couple of years. So these are some of the books I've been picking up and looking at. Thanks to Darren, Joe, Gavin, and a lot of other people that have made these recommendations. But basically, I've just been reading a lot about remote work, as well as startups gain traction, how they do deals, how they do business. These are phenomenal books if you want to figure out how to live your life, kind of like how I've been doing with a lot of the things from my work back in Ontario to how I want to live my life going forward. And these have definitely given me quite a bit of information. So moving on from that, Phase.io, we have kind of gone back on what we've been presenting over the past little while. Like Colin said, we've moved on from student unions and we're now moving into the small businesses. We want to figure out what the small businesses want. And so that means trying not to make a lot of assumptions on what kind of product we want to build. However, we do have to give them something. And we figured that there's going to be some points of where things that are major features that would take a while to code that we want to have made. So we narrowed it down to basically having a really good search function, a note taker, file management, and basically having links to e-learning software. We figured this would be like the kind of spots we want to have businesses look into, but we want to be able to like prove that this is what they want to have for succession management. This is what they want to have to help teach their future employees as well as the people that currently work at their jobs how to do their work better. So a little bit of a task that we've kind of worked on is how to keep track of these issues, and luckily enough GitHub has a very fantastic issue tracker that you can use to basically keep track of things, make milestones and do things like that. So we've actually done that. We've created milestones for our next, we're calling it the re-MVP, because we already made one, actually we made two MVPs prior to this, and now this is our like re-MVP. This is what it kind of looks like. It's pretty sweet. You've probably seen it before with like just little things on maybe the UIT GitHub page where there's like little things to track. But these are just the enhancements. These are the features. We can keep track of the issues of how they're being updated, and how you update them is through the command line. So when you go to update your code, when you go to push an update, you can actually write this. Once you've made the ticket, in your commit message say like number 3, and you'll actually, this will be put in beside that track or that issue or that bug. And then when you're all done with it all, like this commit fixes your stuff, you just say fixed number, whatever the issue number is, and then you push that up and that closes the ticket. It's all gone. It's pretty sweet. So last week, I'm going to show you what I did for Phase. So I should probably clarify that I did not complete the TaskRabbit tutorial, and one thing I wanted to say was if we all wanted a job after this, we just go up to TaskRabbit and be like, hey, look what we built, all of us did this stuff. But I really learned a lot from the Firebase stuff that we made, and so I kind of took that and was like, I'm going to take this running and I'm going to throw it in the Phase. And so this is a little bit of what I built last week. So you'll notice some of the elements are a little bit similar to the tutorial of TaskRabbit. And like you can create new jobs go in, close that off, and you can click on it. You can see I'm pulling down the ID of that job, and I want to create a new note, so go in, make a new note. Here's my WYSIWYG editor. So I want to make a new note. Awesome, cool, that's my title. Now this is where all the stuff that can actually change how it looks. So I can make this entire thing bold, but then beside it, make it unbold, not bold, and then keep on going with that. So the other part that I wasn't able to show in this part here is that there isn't file upload to Amazon's web services, the S3 buckets. Reason why it's not here is just that it wasn't a good way of showing that off, and I really focused on making this look really good. So yeah, you can see this job now pulls in all that information, so I was pretty pumped about that. So what's coming up for us in the future is design code, and when it was first mentioned to us by Gavin a couple weeks ago, I went out and bought it, and this is awesome. This really has boosted up a lot of crazy stuff in my design game, mainly in typography and positioning. So when this first came out, I knew design. I've been with an agency and Sapside art director for a year and a half, and I learned a bunch of things. But the stuff I learned in just like a weekend was really, really cool. There was like just some really cool stuff that I will show you in a second. So I'm really pumped about learning more in Sketch, which is where the design stuff is happening, and being able to do things in Xcode. So demo time, really cool. This is why I asked for this guy. Go. First. And if I could do it, I would. Okay. Sorry about this. Let's take a second. Sorry. So, sketch mirror. I wanted to show you. And it's really sad because I don't think I'm going to be able to. So, I'll just switch it back. But it's, the things I've been doing in Sketch have been really stuff I haven't done before in typography. Learning about how font weights actually matter, learning how much you can read inside a text blocks and why that should be the case. But this is just some of the templates of what I've been doing for Face.io. And we're moving forward with just the mobile version of it right now. So, yeah, thank you for your time, guys.
Alright guys, so as you know, I did the TaskRabbit tutorial last week, and for anyone that has heard me talk, I absolutely loved it. Leo did a really good job about explaining how a lot of Angular services and controllers were working, a lot of things that I was having trouble with, as well as the way to organize your document. So Krieger did a really good but brief, like, you should organize it like this, and I left that being like, that's not how mine's organized at all, I'm scared and confused, and Leo kind of step by step went through exactly what you should be doing, and it just made me feel really happy. So I completed that last week, and since then I've been trying to bring the Firebase to Capture and fix some of the bugs that I was having with it. So this is what, nope. I've done for it. So I improved the way that my pop-up looked based on Leo's tutorial, and then I've created these challenges. So you can add a challenge, and your name will get printed beside it, and you can do it for anything. You can take a photo. Sorry, Rob. You were in my line of vision. He's eating a banana. And then you can submit it to your photos. Right now I don't have them linked to the challenges, which is my next step, to link each of the photos to a single challenge. But like I've told, oh, and I've got the toasters coming, which made me really happy, because alerts are obnoxious, and that's how I was doing it before. And then this is your profile, and you can log out. So that's what I've got so far. Clearly I still have, thank you. a ton of stuff to do because, like I said in my stand-up this morning, denormalization has been really confusing, so I want to link a photo to a challenge, but I also want to link it to a user, and I don't want to be saving that photo twice in my database, and I'm not exactly sure what the what the best way of doing it would be. So that's one of many problems. So I've been trying to treat it like the comments or the accepted offers, except that because a photo is already nested in a challenge, I have like this third nest, and trying to access stuff from here, it just means that it's a lot more calls. And I don't want to be doing that. So this is what Leo's look like, and this is what I was trying to mimic. But like I said, I would then have like user photos, and then the photo, and then I would have to save it again. So I'm trying to think through that, / Rob will think about it with me. And so some of the things that I need to fix is, or think about, I don't know where or how to do this, but on my dashboard, I can accept a challenge, but when I have it on this page, it doesn't know which challenge I'm referring to yet. I have to go in, it's the same with like in TaskRabbit, we had to go into the task to see the task information. So I can't accept it here because the challenge is undefined. So the way that I fixed that when I was using Postgres was making like 3-4 loops that like just, I don't even know, they cycled through each other and magically pumped out the right photo. I'm hoping that I don't have to do that. I'm sure there's an easier way. I just don't know how to do that. As well as like, I don't know why Angular hates me, but it refuses to put this in the same line, and it's an ng repeat, so I can't give it any styling tags to fix it. So that's one of my problems. Another thing that I was thinking about was this page here is just ugly. Like I don't want it to be like the challenge and then you to go in and see this. So I was thinking about making it so Rob was the only one I fixed up, sorry Rob. But making it like, this would be the challenge picture, this would be the people that have added it, and then these are the photos that are in the challenge right now. And then also you could click here, and you could either click here to take a photo, or you could click here to take a photo, and this one would be directly linked to that challenge. Don't know how to do that, but it is completely theoretical at this point. Yeah, so that's as far as I've gotten.
Is it all on localhost, or can we all sign up and go take pictures of Rob and stalk him?
Yeah, so guys, please do. Please do. You can get it at if you have Ionic View with this code, or send me a message and I can email it to you. But you have to have Ionic View to download it. And I'm not going to be doing any pushes to Ionic View today because I know everything that I've touched since I took this video at 10 is now broken. So yeah, it will work the way that you saw in the demo if you would like to play with it today. Yeah, any questions? Oh, and I'm thinking about the final project, and by thinking about, I mean I'm relying on Darian to brainstorm for me, and we can decide together. She has so many good ideas. Yeah, that's it. Cool.
afternoon, everyone. I'm Heather Hoyles, and I'm here to share a little bit of my progress on the TaskRabbit / TaskNinja tutorial, which I called TaskRabbinja. In my case, over the last week and a half, the TaskRabbit cloning has not gone very quickly. It should be renamed TaskTortoise because I am moving at the tortoise pace. I've gotten to roughly about, I think I'm at the end of section 5, but this time, similar to what AJ was saying, usually I go through a tutorial and I just try to get to the end product just to make sure that it works. With Leo's approach, I think it was really interesting because you already knew what you were working toward. And I think I mentioned a couple weeks or a couple months ago that I tend to work better seeing the finished product, dissecting it, and working backwards, which also happens to be the way I write. I write with the end and then I work toward the beginning. So what I find with Leo's tutorial specifically is that I already feel like I've accomplished something because I know exactly what I'm working toward, and then I can go through each step and say, okay, that's exactly how it was built, and dissect it from the ending point as opposed to just wondering if I'm ever going to get to that point. And so even though this tutorial wasn't all that different than some of the other tutorials that I've done, I found it a lot more helpful, concise, clean, and simple, and easy to follow. So I'm taking the time with each individual section. If he says something about a controller or injecting something that I don't understand, I go and spend another half hour or 45 minutes understanding it. So it's not that the tutorial itself is lengthy, it's that I'm actually just giving myself the time to do more research so that I don't have to rely on Rob so much. But that being said, it is slow. My progress, I've gotten to the point where you can add comments and description. I won't go through the little bit of demo I have because you guys are all very familiar with it. But I'm just right at the halfway mark now. So my hope is to finish it in the after hours this week. Let's just see the structure. So my goals, as I mentioned in my stand-up, my project is Task Guru, and I just want to wrap up Task Guru after hours and then dive into the next tutorial. I was actually really intrigued when this project was originally posted in the agenda because I like the idea of having the finished product and cloning it and taking some of the other ideas that I've had and seeing what I can do with it, similar to what AJ said. And then along the way, Carol mentioned, some ways to convert LOP as well as Kaplow using the same architecture. So all of those things that I didn't complete, now I just really want to go and complete them. But of course, more ideas come up along the way. So my thought was to get through the tutorial and then to clone them for 3 different ideas eventually. Brian and Rob and Darren and I worked on Rally Point during the Hackers for St. Louis hackathon, and that needs to be completed. I also have another concept involving the bicycling community and also another concept involving the rehab community in Detroit. So I'll start with the Rally Point just to kind of quickly summarize how I would use the existing architecture for that. It's a community action, political advocacy, and post-crisis volunteer mobilization app, web app. And we were really sort of struggling with a couple of features. And I think giving the existing TaskRabbit or TaskNinja tutorial, all I would really need to do to get to an MVP is to remove the willing to pay function because there wouldn't be any exchange of payment. Rework the CSS a bit and add a Google Maps feature, most of which I think Brian had already completed, just a matter of integrating it with the existing build. And then I'd like to be able to allow multiple people to accept a task because right now one person accepts the task and moves on, pays for it. And I would want multiple volunteers to be able, hundreds of volunteers to align with a particular project or a particular volunteer task. The next concept is a bicycle enthusiast community. I'm just tentatively calling it Fixate. It would enable anyone with a bike to earn income as a bike messenger or a courier. Alternate name would be Cycle List. I have a lot of friends in the cycling community. Every month on the full moon, we ride around in what's called the FBC, and it stands for the fucking Bike Club. And it's just herds and herds of cyclists that take to the streets in the middle of the night and take over the streets and cycle around. So it's this sort of project would work better in a big urban environment, but I've got a lot of friends who would be really eager to test something like this, so I just thought it would be fun to build something for them. So in this case, I just reworked the CSS and repackaged it as Fixate from a branding perspective. I certainly would need to add the contact details. I ran into the same problem with this idea that Shona did. And I'd like it to be hyper locale based, so they're sorting of tasks along specific routes so that bicyclists could say, I'm always going for this route from 9 to 5 back and forth to work. And so that would match you up with people who need the delivery tasks or the courier tasks along that specific route. And then I also would need to explore pre-registration for cyclists for security and consumer trust. Clearly, Uber's got this figured out, but you have to pre-register before you register to use the app so that they can work out any security issues, make sure that those cyclists that's knocking on your door and taking a very important package isn't going to go snag it on you. So I'm still researching how bigger apps are resolving that issue. And then the next thing is just sort of a potential hacktivism project as well. I was reading about the big reclamation efforts in Detroit, and it's a huge, daunting task. There are about 75,000 vacant homes right now that are being stripped. And all of the materials, some of them are heritage homes and really great reusable materials, are going into a massive warehouse that the city is storing, but they don't have an electronic way to share it or to sell it to the rest of the community. So I thought it would be interesting to just have the same architecture of TaskRabbit, but to list and sell available reclaim materials and give them some sort of database feature so that they could do that more efficiently. And just essentially let the municipality use it if they were interested. And from that perspective, it really is just reworking the CSS and adding photo functions, because the existing clone architecture of TaskRabbit is perfect for that particular project. So those were just ideas that came along as I was learning. There's a lot of them. If I get any of them done, this is how I'll feel. But it's not likely, because we have the next tutorial to push through, and I also would like very much to finish either LOP or Kaplow. And then I also need to move on to the startup concept that I've been letting percolate in my brain for the last couple of months. So we'll see. Any questions?
Fix site's a great idea.
Yeah.
You can reach me on Twitter @hboyles. Thank you.